So I had a conversation the other day with a loved one, and we were talking about what does walking out your faith look like? What does living in Torah look like? And so many people say they need examples of what it looks like after coming into truth. When I come into truth, what do I do now? What do I do now is the very thing that Yeshua stated. He said, man shall not live on bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth. Every word of Yah. So we become the living testament of the spoken word. You obey. You start to obey. What does it look like? Well, in different households, it may look different because some mothers aren't afforded the opportunities to stay at home. So they have to work and they have to send their children to school. But you teach your children Deuteronomy 6. You talk about life, practical. Life is practical, in the practical form. And that's how Yeshua did it. Very simple and plain. He dealt with the sign of the times, or what was going on in the culture and the context of the times. Well, what is going on in the culture and context of the times now is a lot of what was going on after his resurrection, when you see Paul going to Caesarea and Peter, them going to proclaim the gospel, where things were corrupt, even in Yeshua's time, when they were corrupt, where government was corrupt, where the religious system was corrupt, and Yah had already laid down a law, and every man was doing what was right in his own eyes, but there was a written law. Yah, when he established the universe, the first thing he did was establish law and order. So there's law and order, just the natural things that go on. If creation obeys Yah, then I obey Yah. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like to walk in Torah. If Yeshua obeyed Yah, I obey Yah. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like walking in Torah. It is listening, reading, listening for his instruction. We know right from wrong. We have moral laws. That's in the Ten Commandments. The first are with man dealing with Elohim, and the next are relational and morally. We know how to, we know right from wrong. We know what stealing, lying, cheating, coveting is. We don't do those things, and we teach them to our children. As far as aesthetics, head wraps, modesty, we know what that is too, because as we've grown and matured, and you've walked in the Word, and you reading the Word, and you're coming out of Babylon, you know things start to look less appealing to you, right? As a 40-something-year-old woman, I'm not going to be walking around with my butt cheeks hanging out, or wearing see-through provocative clothing, or going to the club. That's not Torah. That's not walking out Torah, because now you have people watching you. Wrapping your head, that is a preference, I believe. Some think it's an everyday garb, attire of your garb. But when you work in the mainstream in life, and we have jobs and we have to earn a living, some of us can't just jump off the grid. And I don't know. Some things I think are extreme. But if you're afforded the opportunity and you have the land and you can do that, I support it. But again, when you have areas of influence, and where Yah can use you anywhere, you look at how he used Joseph with the borrowed tomb to lay Yeshua in. He was part of the Sanhedrin. He knew the plot, the plan, and everything, and no one knew that he was a secret follower until it was time to bury Yeshua. He followed his teachings. And that's what it looked like. It looked like seeing the need and meeting it. That's what living in Torah is. It is that as well communally. It is seeing needs and meeting it. It's not about being used and abused. It's not about taking in strays. You have good sense. I am still going to protect my children and my family. I'm not going to just let anybody come live in my house because they say they're a Hebrew and live on my land, because Hebrews hustle too. We've seen that in the Bible too. We've seen the wickedness. You can be of a tribe and still not have any of the laws written in your heart and not wanting to comply or adhere to any of the laws. We see that as well. We see U.S. citizens who live in the U.S. and who do not comply with any of the laws. We have a resident of the White House who does not comply with any of the laws of the nation and is a citizen. So we know the difference. We know what right and wrong looks like. Again, teach these things diligently to your children, to love Yah, to obey Yah. And then it's manifested in your home, because when your children obey you and they fear you, they fear an authority, and then you teach them to fear Yah. By us doing the same thing. There are things I'm not going to do because I fear not just fear the consequences. I do fear the consequences, and I don't want to experience the separation of fellowship with Yah. And that is the same thing we teach our children. So what does living in Torah look like? It looks like everything Yeshua did. As women, we know we desire community. Yes, we desire community. We want to uplift and live and encourage one another. But you also have to be wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. And Yah has given you discernment. You know what groups of women and what conversations you will and won't have, what things you shouldn't talk about. I think Yah gives most people a teaspoon of discernment to know right from wrong. You know what it looked like in the world, certain women. So beware of the same thing in Torah. In the church, it was said, and I used to say it too, the congregation or the assembly is a place for sick people to come and be made well. So remember that we're still working with sick, afflicted, traumatized, injured people that are coming out of Christianity or Babylon. I don't like to say Christianity a lot because that's not the only religion. Who are coming out of religious systems and coming back to the root, the word, and walking out the word and not living in tradition, and living in truth and not living in tradition. And again, the Bible is very practical and functional. And the more you read things, people want to be spiritual. And that's I'm not saying that in a negative connotation, but spiritual to the point they want to just jump from basic understanding to being, oh, I'm enlightened and I know. No, that enlightenment usually is either you off by yourself and no one else can see your flaws and you think you're enlightened, but not until we leave here will we combat and battle adversity and distractions and self. We're going to constantly battle those things. But obedience gives Yah a place in your heart and in your life to use you. And if you're standing on the edge of life all of the time, well, what if I do this? Yah's told me to do this, but what about this and what about this? You'll never ever experience Him. Some of the best, some of the highlighted prophets and preachers and those of the Bible are those that stepped out onto nothingness just by hearing Yah's voice and taking Him at His word. So that's what living in Torah looks like. Take Yah at His word. Taste and see. Try Him and see that He is that and all that and then some, that He is your protector, provider, your judge, your priest, and your king. Living in Torah is a daily walk. It's a daily walk, a daily choice to choose to choose you this day, between life and death. Will I do what will manifest and blossom into more life, or will I choose things that will kill my witness, my ministry? Again, what does walking in Torah look like? It looks like the word. It looks like what Yeshua did. It looks like we need to get back into our book. Read, apply. Reading and applying. We can't say we are knowledgeable if we don't apply the knowledge that we have obtained. So we read, we apply, and we ask Yah for insight and wisdom. And he said, I give wisdom to those who ask. I give it freely. Ask and you will receive it, because it's lined up in his will. His will is not for us to perish, for us to be lost. He loves us. He wants to, like in Zechariah says, oh, how I've longed to just take you up under my wing and brood over you like a mother does her baby chicks. I want to love you and instruct you, but you got to start. You got to do something. Start doing what it looks like to you in the word, that you should be doing, in this system. How are you going to combat the culture? That's what we're doing. That's what walking in Torah looks like with us right now, with our children, having teenagers, preteen, even having grown-ups. I have grandchildren, grown-up children, preteen. It looks like combating the culture. Everything is is a teachable moment. When you're watching TV with them, it's a teachable moment to teach about character and about what is that Torah? What does that look like? And you can take your children to the word. Take yourself. I take myself to the word when I see certain things. When I'm sitting in public and listening to certain listening to certain conversations or looking at certain women's behavior, and it is buffoonery or it is just absurd, and it's when it's it devalues, or it kind of makes me turn my lip up. I have to watch my face sometimes, because you see the need. That's the need. Walking in Torah looks like the opposite of what you're doing a lot of the times, because when you're walking in Torah and you are knowledgeable of the things that offend the Father, you don't do them. So that's what walking in Torah looks like. This will be one of many, because there were some distinct questions that were asked, like, what is it? Now that I'm in Torah, what do I do with my finances? Yah says you are to be a steward over everything that He gives you, right? So I'll be adding some scripture to those things, to that. Well, how do I discipline my children? The way Yah says if a man doesn't discipline his children, he doesn't love them. We're not talking about beating them and killing them and degrading them and calling them names, but in love, correcting. And sometimes you might end up, you feel like you want to be forceful with your children. A lot of times it's because you've allowed certain behaviors to go on so long, and it's hard to bend a tree once it's strongly rooted in the way that it's been allowed to act. It's easy to bend a young tree. It's pliable. You can bend the tree and tie it and make it sturdy and shape it in the way that you want it to grow. What does Torah look like if I have an unbelieving spouse? I'll have some scriptures and something to go along with that. What does Torah say about dealing with and honoring our parents who some of us might deem as have dropped the ball or have abused and mistreated us? I'm really going to look for a lot of scriptures about that, and in that still do what Yah says: honor your parent, even if it's I believe that all things that we've experienced are part of our story and for others, But I believe you still honor him, and you share when the opportunity is presented, when there are other people who have experienced that same thing and are struggling to heal. So Yah will cause you to forget your pain because of the things that the way that he'll manifest blessings in your life, and to meditate on his word and focus on him. So again, just wanted to touch on that today, and I will be coming with more of what does living in Torah look like now that I've come into truth. And again, have a wonderful day. Shalom.